It's agenda item 5.1, north of Treneague. It's a Breock ETE scheme, and I'll go through the tests on that just to make sure you're all clear. Starting with associated access improvements, parking, and robust landscaping. So the key issues for this application is firstly primarily the principle. So I'll just read out the kind of wording for paragraph 80E, just so you're aware, and happy to refresh during the meeting if needed. Should be in the report as well. But the design is, so the design of the building is unacceptable if it is of exceptional quality in that it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help raise standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance the unit setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. So that's the test in terms of paragraph 80E. In terms of design and character, that kind of formulates in there, what we're looking at as well. Access. And then biodiversity and ecology, just to update in terms of the addendum on ecology, we did outline that there was no likely significant effects, just rephrasing that to no likely significant effects, just so that's aware to councillors. And there has been a further report from Pegasus, who have had a landscape opinion, and that should be on the file and public to view. It does not change officer's opinion, but that should be made aware to you. And then another consideration, it is flooding and the impacts. So this is just the location plan. Just shows the location of the proposal. So you've got Wadebridge to the northeast, red down and the red line indicates where the dwelling would be, and the associated garden area. The black line is the county wildlife site area. And this map doesn't actually show, but it's in an area of great landscape value as well, and that's so it kind of follows, and it does run alongside this road, so the application is fully within the area of great landscape value. This runs around here down, just so you're clear. So this is another site plan showing the application site in red. Dwelling, as you'll see on later plans, is around this location. It's been slightly amended, which we'll go through. And then, just to be clear, there is a footpath. This does lead to Wadebridge. So there's a road here, small woodland section, and there's a footpath to Wadebridge. This is still quite high gradient and unlit, so considered in the climate policy to apply. So this is just an aerial plan, so just shows you a satellite image of the application site and its characteristics, and some of the photos will help assist in just understanding the character as well. So this is a section of the dwelling looking south, so this is kind of a cross section of the dwelling, and there's a useful indication here of which side of the dwelling you're looking at. The visuals will show kind of how the dwelling will look in better. This is another section looking north. Just shows the end of the dwelling and the green of the land and how it's settled on the land. Again, the west elevation, so this is the main facade or principal elevation, showing you the design of the dwelling, wide stilts, soft to landscape, again, just indication of which elevation you're looking at. And finally, the road elevation. So this has been amended, so there will be a Cornish hedgerow in front of this, to remain, and yeah, it just shows you the kind of the amount of the dwelling would be visible from that highway. This is just the ground floor levels. So it's primarily the living areas, so the more central areas here, and there's a terrace, but that will be on first floor level, and bedroom and office. And this is the first floor level. This is more of the bedroom areas, and there's the gallery. So this is a useful plan. So this is a kind of master plan showing all the planting that's been incorporated, and there are other plans which are available to show the extent of planting, how that'll be managed, and how long that'll be managed for. But that's just what I'll submit this plan just through the planting that's incorporated in the site. So just going through the site. So we've got new sections of Cornish Hedgerow. I believe they're about 10 metres long to the new access area. Small access area with a small building here just for cover. So it's kind of primarily a journey through the site. So you'll be walking through here to the access to the site. We've got new orchard planting. There's a lot of new trees and woodland planting within the area. There'll be boardwalks around the area, new planting, wild meadow here, and there's lots of ecological gains as well. So we are looking at high level of net gain. I think it's about 80%. It should be in your report again near the end of it, just showing you the net gain that this is requiring. Another important aspect about the planting is all included in the zero net carbon approach. So that's going to be sequestering carbon and then offsetting any carbon through the development stage as well. So it's high level landscaping. This just shows you a more detailed kind of plan of the immediate house and its area, just showing the boardwalks and kind of the journeys you'll take to the dwelling. And the associated planting nearby to the wild meadow, new planting here, new trees, and kind of retaining that hedgerow there with the high ridges to the soil. Now this is just a plan showing the floodplain. So there's flood zones 3 and 2 highlighted these colours here. Not obvious to the eye on that image, but it sits outside any flood zone, so it's effectively in flood zone 1 due to its location and height. And there will be a condition, if approved, in line with the EA recommendations. This is a location plan just showing the kind of evolution of the siting of the dwelling. So it's been moved outside the county wildlife site. So again, not very clear, but I'll try and guide you through it. This line here is the county wildlife line. So this is the new siting. So it's sited outside the county wildlife site when originally it was partly within the county wildlife site. There will be some of the garden within the county wildlife site, but we won't have any lots of kind of grassland or planting through the site of the dwelling. So just to look at some visuals of the dwelling that's been proposed. So we've got timber cladding to the house, timber belt to reduce the carbon offsets of the dwelling. Small undercroft area there, which is a nice feature. Walks and journeys through the site with wild meadow planting. There will be a cedar roof as well, if that was clear on the plans. Again, just another useful visual, just shows how the dwelling will sit in the site and how it will look. So there has been small minutes to the level of glazing here, so that's going to be slightly reduced, just to limit impact to many species. But as we said, there's no likely significant impact, no likely impact. Yeah, just shows you the dwelling and kind of its features and how it will sit on the landscape. Again, just another visual, just showing how it's kind of working with the environment, with the dwelling, including some of the trees on site and incorporating that. Again, just another visual just to show you how the dwelling will look on the site. And this is just the entrance area. So this is to the north of the site, just showing you the entrance area, kind of how it kind of balconies you into the site. So just some images of the site, just for your reference. So this is the access area to the north. So this is existing access. So we've got a vehicle entrance and a pedestrian entrance. And I'll try and kind of take you on a kind of a walk through the photos through the site from north to south. So this is the north. This is kind of swiveling 180, so it's looking at south towards the site. This is in the winter. There are some photos in the summer as well, taken from the sign access statement, just so both seasons can be seen. It's just looking south and southeast towards the site. Just looking at the features. It's quite wooded in areas, but there are areas of later grass as well. Again, just talking through the site, showing the key features. So there's a pond to the right there, and that'll be visible in the next photo. This just shows it in the summer as well, just showing you the kind of existing vegetation on site and existing character. This is kind of more when it's visited. And then the existing pond here. This is kind of moving towards where the dwelling would be. So there's a small summer house, and the dwelling's going to sit over here, and then we've got areas kind of laid the lawn, and then some trees to the right. The entrance to the summer house, just in the last photo, so the dwelling is going to sit around in this area here. Again, this is more of a kind of a winter photo, and just showing you the approximate kind of location of where the dwelling will be. Then just the areas laid to grass, just showing you again the character of the site. Again, dwelling now to the right side of your screen. So in terms of the balance considerations, so it does not comply with any of the housing policies within the Cornwall local plan. So we're assessing this against paragraph 80E of the National Planning Policy Framework. So this is the paragraph that we have minded to approve. We'll be looking at. So that provides some scope for new dwellings in the agricultural sites. However, while officers are of the view, or haven't kind of contradicted the view that it is outstanding design, reflecting the high standards of architecture, we're not of the view that it does significantly enhance its immediate setting and is sensitive to the characteristics of the site and local area. So in that case, we are of the view that it fails to comply with the paragraph 80E of the NPPF, and it should be reiterated that it's a very, very high test. So that just should be noted in consideration as well. It's not considered the proposal leads to any significant impact to neighbouring immunity, and that's just through the siting of the dwelling and the distance to surrounding dwellings or properties. So the application seeks to utilise an existing access, as the access that we saw in the photos just previously, and they will introduce a new formalised parking area. It's considered that suitable turning is secured to parking there, and the visibility be acceptable. And there's a new corner shade road, as I showed on the plans, which will allow for better visibility as well. Just in terms of ecology, it's considered that the scheme would not lead to a significant impact. Again, we are of the view that there will be no likely impact to EPS, so doing the derogation tests, and then the biodiversity net gains of the scheme have been noted, and they are positive of the scheme, so that should be noted as well. And then finally, flooding risk is not viewed as being a material concern. So we have consulted our local lead flood authority and the EA, and they're both content, subject to conditions that are approved. So that's not seen as a significant concern. But on balance, because of the conflict with paragraph 80E of the NPPF, officers are minded to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Our first public speaker is from the Parish Council, Councillor Raymond Jarrett. Registered to speak. If you'd like to come and take the place there, you will have 3 minutes to address the committee. We'll give you a 30-second warning before the end, and then we will cut you off at 3 minutes. If you can just make sure that you hit the button on the microphone and the light comes on.
Not yet. Nobody's turned it on yet. Have to wait for a second. Now try it again.
Try again.
There you go.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Ray Jarrett, Chairman to Somerset Parish Council, and I'm here to provide our council support to the application before you. Our council attended a site meeting with the applicants and their consultants on the 6th of January 2022. Our councillors have been fully apprised beforehand on all the elements required to meet the very high threshold of paragraph 80 application. The site meeting was the most informative and detailed site visit that our council has ever attended. After deliberation, we were sufficiently convinced by the merits of the proposal that we felt able to fully support the application. We have maintained our position to this day, further strengthened by side of a positive independent assessments, especially by the design review panel report that concludes that the proposal meets all the stringent requirements set. We would also note that at every step, the applicants have been very open to change and fine-tune their designs to meet a variety of specialist inputs. The planning officer's view is that Lower Treneague is in the open countryside and does not form part of a settlement. We would suggest that it is better described as part of a spatial collection of properties that lie between the settlements of Polmora and Breock, which, as you know, is not an uncommon feature within rural Cornwall. We can confirm that the previous owners of Lower Treneague had over many years transformed its grounds into a beautiful much-admired formal garden, albeit introducing non-native species, and these gardens were occasionally open to the public to support charitable events. The new proposal will now include a house of truly outstanding design and architectural standards set within grounds sympathetically returned to a more natural environment, supported in a range of local flora and fauna. We believe any potential concerns over precedent setting should not form part of determination, as each individual application should be considered on its own merits. It is right that the approval bar is set high, and in this case, independent appraisal indicates an exceptionally high standard proposal meeting those requirements. Our view that this is a significant
30 seconds remaining.
Our view that this is a significant opportunity for Cornwall Council to demonstrate that when presented with exceptional high standards of design and architecture that is sympathetically introduced to create a quality landscape without detriment to either environmental or existing ecology is worthy of your support. We respectfully request that this application is approved. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Councillor Joe. If you can just hold on. Councillor Long.
Yes, good morning to you. Just a quick clarification. The offer for the councillor for the area, who's not here today, in his statement implies that this it is argued that this proposal is within the hamlet boundary, but you're saying it's in the open countryside. So just to clarify, because the report from the developers talk about being in the open countryside, you talk about being in the open countryside, but the original member talks about potentially being part of the Polmora hamlet.
Yeah, what it is that Lower Treneague is in that location, and around it there are other properties, although not in close proximity to where this site is. But it does form that sort of spatular group of houses between that settlement of Polmora and the upper settlement of Breock.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fitter.
Actually, sir, on a visit in January of this year, you mentioned previously about the formal garden aspect of this site.
Yes.
When you made that visit, and it was January, so it was some pretty sort of unseasonal weather, did it still have the appearances of being a formal garden setting?
Yeah, I live in Breock, the hamlet above Lower Treneague, and I've been there for 25 years, and we've known that Lower Treneague to be a beautiful landscape garden. On the day that we visited, on the 6th of January, it's probably one of the wettest days in January this year. But it still gave a presence of being a garden. It's very difficult from the pictures that you've seen with all of the budding there.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee for the parish council? Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Our next public speaker is Ray Phillips, please. You will also have 3 minutes. We'll give you a 30-second warning before the end. If you can just make sure that the microphone's on, I think it's still on.
Thank you. Can you hear me? This speech has been written by Charlotte, and I am simply reading on her behalf. I am very sorry for not being able to remove myself enough to deliver these words. However, these 3 minutes are the culmination of the past 3 years of my life, and I would hate for this project to be let down and the team by becoming unable to continue because of pressure and nerves. I and my team, however, welcome any questions that you may have as a result. This project began as my partner and I wanted to self-build a zero net carbon family home with the purpose of showing how all development had the responsibility to act as a tool to enhance biodiversity. The idea for the project did not come first, rather the garden inspired the idea. The fear that such a carefully curated secret garden could easily be lost was our motivation. Our role has always been to be custodians of this garden and to secure its future. From the name of the house through every part of our design process, the garden has remained the focus. By its nature, paragraph 80 dissolves the ability to make frivolous design choices, so every single decision has been with the intention to serve the garden and its surroundings. Garden deserved a process where we were held accountable to push the standards of architecture, to do better, be more responsible, and to be sympathetic but never apologetic. Despite the obvious challenges to this policy, it is inspiring, complex, misunderstood, and holds an easily overlooked importance. Since our pre-apps working alongside the case officer for a year, we made many design changes before getting us to where the project is today. Some of these now superseded reports have misleadingly been quoted by your officer, so for clarity, I shall list the facts which reflect where the project is today. There are no consultative objections. The case officer's only reason for refusal is that he does not feel that our scheme reaches the second part of paragraph 80E, where we significantly enhance our immediate setting. The quoted LPIA, whose conclusions were used to inform many design decisions, was produced over 2 years ago and superseded. Our current evidence base and landscape note was produced by a landscape architect who specialises in paragraph 80E and concludes that our project does result in a significant enhancement. We also have the full support of the Southwest Design Review Panel, who also conclude that we reach all the tests of the policy. We have maintained the full support of the Parish Council throughout this process and have neighbour support. As if those endorsements weren't enough, the inspector has clarified how the assessment of significant enhancement should be made. He explains the assessment should never be a comparison of a site before and after, but a holistic view of the anticipated merits of the scheme, where enhancement like our unprecedented VNG of 84% are taken into account. I hope that you will do the same with the application today. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can just hold on for questions from the committee. Any questions or clarification from the speaker? No? Councillor Long?
Yeah, thank you. It's really the report of the Cornwall Council Landscape Officer, which is not glowing. When you say there's been no formal objection, but there does seem to be an issue that they have, but it is still a building in an undeveloped part of the countryside. How have you responded to that?
So those comments were provided a few months ago now. There's been changes to the application since that time. The glazing has been reduced. We provided additional information on ecology. We've had a further independent assessment by Pegasus, who are landscape architects who specialise in paragraph 80 dwellings. And obviously we've had the inspector's decision on paragraph 80 in Cornwall, which actually provides that clarification on how you assess the setting point. And we feel that the landscape officer's comments didn't take that holistic view of the site. It's purely on the basis of introducing a dwelling into the gardens, which obviously doesn't help our case.
Okay, so if I could just very quickly come back on that. So in the summary of the key issues that they've used as the landscape officer, section 1, it says the significant concern is raised both on the impact of permanent human habitation in the lower valley and the effect of the buildings internalising on the area designated as a CWS. So you're saying that is your argument that has now been resolved by your changes to the design,
reducing the window sizes, etc.
I
I can
can
understand that bit, but how have you responded to the impact of permanent human habitation that was raised?
Oh, in response to that, I think if anyone visits site, there's already that human habitation. The applicants own the site and they're there at the moment. There's going to be no additional increase of use in that sense.
Thank you.
Councillor Cruz.
Yes, thank you very much. Following on from that, Cornwall Council has declared an ecology emergency, and it was unanimously agreed because we have 40% loss of wildlife. The Cornwall Council ecologist in his report said encroachment on land take is not supported because we must maintain and protect and enhance the countryside. Now, I just wondered how you're able to support enhancement when the county ecologist is saying that he cannot support it.
The comments I think that you're looking at, they're old comments, and since that time there is no loss of CWS. The dwelling was removed out of that location.
But the County Wildlife Trust did say they did not change their position on that.
Perhaps a clarification point of the officer, but as far as I'm concerned, there shouldn't be an objection.
Thank you. Councillor Fitter.
In your presentation, you mentioned and made the point distinctly, this is not just about building a house, it's about completing a project that encompasses the whole area of the garden land. So you're saying that the house is just a complement and part of the project to preserve these fairly beautiful gardens that were laid out by the previous owners. Is that a fair summary of what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Thank you. Is there no other questions from the committee? Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. The next public speaker would be the divisional member. I don't think he's on the call, but I just want to double check before we move on to questions of the officer. Okay.
Chairman, just clarity. I understand that the local member is actually away on holiday.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions of the case officer, please? Councillor Long.
Yeah, thank you. Going back first of all to the location and the geography. Are you looking at this as being a house in the open countryside under paragraph 80, or are you looking at it on the edge of a hamlet in Cornwall when you're looking at your reasons?
Yeah, we're looking at this as a house in the
Yeah, just paragraph 80. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
If I can just ask about the point that was raised with the last speaker and the objection from the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. So are we saying that because the dwelling has been moved slightly outside of the Wildlife Trust area, that they wouldn't otherwise have been consulted? So their objection, does it still stand?
Yeah, so that objection was relatively early, and we have moved the dwelling outside the county wildlife site. I can get the just so that's visible to everyone.
I guess the question is, since the applicant has moved the site of the dwelling, would we have still gone out to consultation with the Cornwall Wildlife Trust?
I think we would have consulted just due to its proximity. I think we have reconsulted once the dwelling's been moved outside the county wildlife trust.
Okay.
So,
I can actually just let my
Yes,
I've spoken direct to our ecologist as she discussed with the Cornwall. Who's the consultee we're talking about? Sorry, Cornwall Wildlife Trust. Sorry, she consulted with the Cornwall Wildlife Trust, and as a result of moving it out of the actual site designation itself, and also a condition to restrict light, our ecologist and the Cornwall Wildlife Trust aren't objecting anymore. Make that clear.
Thank you. Councillor Cruz, did you have a question?
Wait, so I thought it was the County Wildlife Trust. Are we talking about the County Wildlife Trust or the Cornwall?
yeah, I think it's a county wildlife site.
I think they're called Cornwall Wildlife Trust.
Oh, Cornwall Council, okay. Okay.
Councillor Fenn.
Sorry, no, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, that was your question.
Thank you for your email I got this morning about the garden. Just a point of interest. So if this, we have decided it's open countryside, but had it been decided it was a garden, would it mean that there would be permitted rights in the garden area?
So permitted rights anytime if it's within the curtilage.
Yes.
So I don't think it would be in the curtilage in any case.
Okay.
So
Just wondering what, you know, what the definition would be and why this is put forward as a garden and whether it had any implications to the planning.
I think it would still be within the countryside.
Yeah.
Albeit being a garden, if it is considered to be a garden. I think you need to look at the history of the site, the character of the sites you've seen in the photos, just to make consideration on that.
Yes, okay.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sam. So on the local league authority bit of it, so they're saying that in their opinion, no development approved this permission to commence until number 3 says confirmation from Southwest Water Limited that the foul network has sufficient capacity to cater for this development. So is that a position you're maintaining on struggling? Is there a sewer nearby? I'm struggling to think that there would be there would be part of the foul network within reach of the property.
I wouldn't have thought that was a house.
If your mind is approved, we could get conditions for foul drainage anyway, regardless of that.
What sort of, so what sort of condition would you envisage in the absence of a Southwest Water main sewer to come into?
So we would put a condition on, say, prior to commencement, give us details so we know if the solution was being presented was acceptable. If your mind is to go down the track of approving it.
Okay.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Sam. Sam, this is an interesting one. Obviously, the fact that the paragraph 80 application indicates that it obviously is considered to be an open countryside. More often than not, with this type of application, the harm is quite visible because usually they're in a field type location, whereas with this application, it looks as if much of the work to enhance, to add biodiversity has already taken place, as was sat with what we hear is in, you know, a garden type setting, although it's not necessarily a garden. When you visited the site, when I looked at the pictures that you put up on the screen in front of me, I'm struggling to see what harm's going to be caused by this application. Could you just give a little bit more detail, please, what harm you think this might?
Yes, I think there's a difference between visual harm and planning harm. So I think visually, it's not going to be too prominent in terms of the landscape, just because it is within those grounds. There's a highway that rises above the dwellings to be set down, and they have removed the access to the eastern side, so it's going to be hidden behind the existing hedgerow there. Nonetheless, it is within the countryside, so at the sustainability of it and the overall balance. We are removing a short area or piece of area. I think the balance obviously argued is whether the design of the dwelling and then the associated planting, biodiversity net gain positives outweigh that harm in terms of it, how it's sited, and removal of some of that land, and then looking at the accessibility of it as well in terms of the environmental harm there as well. And that's kind of the balance that you should be looking at.
Okay, so that basically coming back to your position, most of the harm is being caused due to the nature of the fact that you consider it to be an open countryside.
Yeah, I mean, one of the views in the open countryside, we're saying it's a Silver River Valley, it's within the HLV and partly within the Council Wildlife site, albeit with the dwelling outside. So they are clear designations, and we should be looking to conserve those areas. So that's why we're saying harm.
I can just guys jump on there too. One part of the reason why we consider results is that the site's valued at the moment. There's a contribution it makes to the natural distinctive character of the area. And when you introduce a house in our minds, that chips away at that. There's a negative impact by putting the house there. It removes part of what we think makes the character value at the moment.
Come back to it, thank you. Well, what I'm trying to lead to and what I'm trying to get at, I don't like to compare applications to the previous application that we had here, which we refused, which was what I appealed, was in a similar situation to this under the same constraints to which was overturned. And that's why personally I see less harm with this application than what I did with the previous one. That's what I'm just trying to get your view as you've been on site. So there's not really a question there. Would you agree? Would you? Well, there is a question, I guess, in the fact that how do we split the difference between this and what's gone before when actually much of it's the same?
So before saying gives you an answer, I just want to make some comments on the previous decision. So that's one decision by one inspector spoke to that application site and that proposal. So we've got a different site here, different design. We could find other decisions by inspectors that refuse paragraph 80E decisions. We haven't, for the reason that we need to look at what's in front of us now. The difference between, and in my mind, the difference between what officers are telling you now and what the inspector said in the previous recent decision anyway, was that the inspector discounted what's there on the site. And I think that's wrong. So the test in the NPPF states that we need to significantly enhance its immediate setting. And I don't see how you can discount what's on site when the test is enhancing. I think the starting point is what's there, and your assessment does enhance what's there. I don't think the inspector was correct to say that you can discount what's there when the test is enhanced, because enhanced must mean making better. If you're making something better, I think you need to take into account what's there to begin with. So in short, it's one decision. I disagree with some of the fundamentals and how the inspector got there. That's my opinion. But most importantly, the message is about the previous decision is that you need to look at each case on its merit. You need to look at this design, you need to look at the receiving environment and make your mind up on this scheme.
And just add in the paragraphs 31 and 32, just the differences between the two.
Councillor Fitter, then Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. I wonder if we could refer you to your paragraph 57 in report. It's page 37 of our papers, which talks about the garden plan. Yeah, it's contended about the garden plan. And you conclude on the basis of uncertainty, your officers of the opinion that the application is in the countryside, not garden land. I just wonder what weight did you give to the submission by the local member on page 22, where he copied in the details of the garden of the area that we are identifying as a garden to possible buyers, and it's a pretty formative description. I think you can see there. And this was the document that was presented to the buyers, so one would expect it to have had some limited weight and accuracy. I just wondered, my first question is, what weight did you give to that statement that was going to be sent to the possible buyers? It's on page 22. And when you made your decision that it was not garden land.
Yeah, so when we're looking at garden land, obviously we give that some weight, but we're looking at it from a planning perspective. So we're looking at to the site, the site, because there is some history in terms of it being the garden lands for Treneague. It's now in separate ownership. So they've bought a part of that land. There's been a certificate to show that that is the use of the lands. It would have been helpful to actually distinguish what the actual use of the site was. It's been well managed for some time. Does it mean it's garden land?
I can help also, John, if I could just jump in there. The statement from a real estate person selling a property doesn't mean it's lawful in planning terms. So it might be and it might not. I think that's the reason why we've concluded what we have. We're not satisfied that it is garden due to genuine uncertainty. We look at the aerial photos and it's not clear. Look, it might be garden, but the correct process to establish whether or not it is garden is still a certificate. and a certificate of lawfulness. And if that was submitted, that gives the opportunity for everyone to have their say. We'd ask neighbours, we'd ask the community, we'd ask for evidence from the applicant demonstrating the actual use as garden. I know you know that just because you are planting something on an area of land, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a garden. It needs to be considered to the use of the house. We just don't have that evidence. So I can't put my hand on my heart and tell you now it is or isn't a garden. What I can tell you is that the correct process wasn't followed. We invited the applicant to submit a certificate, and they decided not to do that. So our position without that evidence is that it's not a garden.
Okay, right. So you made the decision it's not a garden, and despite the fact that and also of course we heard from the parish councillor and the gentleman who said he was aware that this had been opened to members of the general public to come and see it as a garden, and the layout is such. But anyway, you've not been able to accept that as weight.
We haven't followed the correct mechanism. We haven't asked everybody. So, and the reason why I say that is that there might be other neighbours nearby, and I don't know if there are, but there might be other neighbours nearby that might have a different view. So the reason why we have the process of having a certificate is that it opens the question up to the community at large, and you often get different opinions, and we need to make that decision. The evidence that's been submitted for this application suggests it is a garden. We haven't asked everyone, the people that have submitted that evidence, people who have taken interest in this planning application, which could exclude others. So the fair process of finding out whether there is something, you can't do any other type of use, is asking the community at large, getting the applicant to submit evidence that spoke to that.
And my last question is, could you just bring up the picture again that you took us on a tour through the estate? And could you just bring up the first picture you took?
Yeah, and this is the entrance to the actual development, such, right? This is where people come in. If I just want to draw attention to members, in fact,
Your microphone's not on again.
There we are. I just want to draw your attention, sir, and ask your question. And then opposite the gate and the hedge across the way, there is a footpath sign, and that footpath goes up slope. Eventually takes you into Wadebridge, correct? Is that correct, sir? Yep. Thank you very much indeed. So it does have connectivity by footpath with Wadebridge.
Yeah, and that should be in the report as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for that question, Councillor Fitter. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. I'm getting a bit confused now. When it's a garden, not a garden. When it's a field, not a field. But my question is about the county wildlife site where I live. A lot of county wildlife sites, AONB, AGLV. Do you think, in your honest opinion, that there is a lot of harm to the AGLV and the county wildlife site if this were built because of the lighting, the movement of people? Obviously, there's going to be quite a lot of people around, and I know what can happen when AGLVs and county wildlife sites get built near. It just disappears, harms the area. Do you think the same?
Yeah, so the dwelling has been moved outside the county wildlife site, so that's limited the harm in terms of direct impact. So there might be associated impacts with the increase in use. Just through being there, dwelling there's not a dwelling on site, so that could have some impact to the county wildlife site. And there's associated lighting with landscaping mitigating that, so that's in terms of view range of potential species, but they are reducing the light and there'll be lighting conditions if approved. Yeah, we are of the view that it would harm the AGLV.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to be clear on that, the county wildlife issues being addressed and so far, and that our ecologists are raising no objection, and as the details that's been submitted to the application itself, in terms of the removal of invasive species and planting, could have a positive impact on it. The reason we were concerned prior to evidence recently received was the impact of lighting onto the wildlife site. We've now received evidence kindly from the applicant to remove that. Yeah. Our reason for recommending it for approval at the moment is the impact on the character of the area, which includes the area of great landscape value.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any further questions from the committee or the officers? No, if there are no further questions, we'll move.
Just very briefly.
Councillor Fairman.
Yeah, very quickly. I'm just looking at the catchment map. Is this not caught up on the phosphates issue on the? It's outside of that, isn't it?
It's outside.
Thank you. We'll move this on to the debate. Who would like to start this off? Councillor Cruz.
Thank you very much. Yes, as I said before, we have declared as a council an ecological emergency, and this is a Sylvan Valley, which is a county wildlife site. I've read all the reports from the landscape officer, the Cornwall County ecologist and the County Wildlife Trust, all which are quite clear that harm would be a result of this development for whatever reason. So I refer to paragraph 179 of the National Planning Board, which require the local planning officer to safeguard, local planning authority to safeguard locally designated sites. And I feel that we have a duty to protect our wildlife and protect our county wildlife sites. And it concerns me greatly that we dismiss paragraph policy 1, 2, 3, 7, 12, 21, 23, all for one national policy, which is somewhat open to subjective. But we don't have a subjection in this case because we have 3 reports from our officers saying quite clearly that there is harm. So I struggle with this application and I propose that we do refuse it.
Councillor Law.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I think I would first of all agree with the officer. This is a very balanced proposal. Looking at the other 2 that I know that we've dealt with under this guise of the committee, the Exeter one and the Brisbane one, the officers have been solid in their reasons for refusal on those 2 and this one. On the Exeter one, the committee decided to approve it. On the Brisbane one, the inspector decided to approve it. But on this one, at the moment, it's down to us. Now, where I would agree with what Councillor Cruz said is that, yeah, we're looking at paragraph 80 of the National Planning Policy Framework. I'm not going to get too little. That is the downside of having a policy made up in London and not made here. But actually, this isn't the place to debating that. We are in the reality that we have to deal with the National Planning Policy Framework alongside our Cornwall local plan and any neighbourhood plans. The Cornwall local plan obviously appears to point to refusal, but the National Planning Policy Framework appears to point to approval. So it's where we get the balance between those 2. I voted against the last 2, but reality is that they were both approved. One by you guys against my better judgment, and one by the inspector against our better judgment. I think comparing these, it is very difficult to compare this one with the other 2. They are individual sites, individual locations. They all have their pros and cons to it. Having listened to the debate, having listened to the questions, having listened to the speakers, at the moment, I am leaning towards probably approving this. I think we are looking at, this isn't the place to start an argument about the importance of national planning policy compared with Cornwall Council policy. So in my view, we should have an NPPF, we should have a NPPF, which should be our policy. We don't have that, the government's have imposed on us. So given that this is a situation, and that given the reality of what happened in Brisbane, I don't know, different sites, different case, but some of the arguments are very, very similar. I am balancing towards approving it, but I won't put a because the Council Cruz has actually a recommendation already, well, that hasn't been seconded yet.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chairman. There is no doubt that this is a beautiful building. For me, it's in the wrong place. I mentioned the wildlife site and the LGOB, and I think that weighs heavily on me, so I'll second Councillor Cruz's approval.
Councillor Fitter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is up in front of us now. I think it's a very exciting design building that complements this valley site. I believe it is a garden, and I know the area very well. It is a secluded garden. It is secluded. It will not intrude into anyone. No one can see it. So they can't see it from across the way. There's a Tom McCallum road that goes up that valley. That I think it's a private road number. It ticks all the boxes of the inspector's appeal decision when he said, in actual fact, the main issue on the dwelling that was subject to appeal that came in after this one. And it says the impact of the character and appearance of the surrounding landscape. But I don't believe it has anything other than to add to this character. It's an exciting contribution to this, what I call garden site. Its sustainability in terms of accessibility to daily services and facilities. Yes, it is outside, you know, and most people will drive a car, I think, to Wadebridge. But there is, as the officer pointed out, there is this footpath connection that goes into Wadebridge. And indeed, this road that runs behind this building, if I'm not wrong, is the one-way system that is used by the Royal Cornwall show people when they take people in to arrive, and then it's turned around in the evening and they go out that way as you go through the showground. And then we come to the government policy in framework for ISO homes in the countryside. And this is paragraph 80E. And as Councillor Long said, we have to observe that policy. That policy is supreme over our local plan. You know, we cannot, you know, that is the way it goes. So if we are satisfied, if I'm satisfied, if other members are satisfied, that it does follow that policy and it does tick all the boxes for that policy, then that really, unfortunately, overturns any of our protections we made in our own policies. Normally, in actual fact, this wouldn't see the light of day. It wouldn't be given a nod, and I suspect we don't parish council, who are the guardians for this area as the local authority and the grassroots, it's Breock, they wouldn't be ticking the boxes and say, no way, Jose. But we are where we are, and I believe it makes the case why we have to be slightly brave and say, let's give this a go. This is something exciting. And the last thing I'd say from the presentation by the agent on behalf of them, they are not going to damage the status of this area. They're not going to destroy it. They're going to enhance it. They're going to protect it. They're going to nurture it. Are we going to allow it just to become an overgrown wasteland? I shall be submitting approval of the application. So thank you.
Is that a proposal to approve?
No, well, I think it'd be premature because you have one already for refusal. Okay. Thank you.
I'll come back with that.
Councillor Parsons.
Thank you, Chair. I find a lot of common ground with the two previous speakers, and in fact, it's lovely to think Councillor Hannah and myself have so much in common, because I too actually voted against the previous two paragraph 80 applications that came before us. As already been said, it's government policy and it supersedes everything within the local plan. And I do think it allows developers to get away with perhaps a little bit too much. But with regards to this application, as Councillor Peter said, I think the plan is actually quite exciting. I think the way and the work which has gone into it to make it fit within that setting works. You know, for me it works. It's modern, it's bright, it's clean, it's airy, without having the perhaps impact on the wider setting that you might come to expect with something that's modern. It does almost with the soft colours and the tones of the wood. I think that helps it just sit within there. And not only does it complement the site, I think it actually almost does enhance the site. With regards to the impact on the environment, any development in open countryside will have an element of impact, but actually by allowing dwelling in this setting, quite likely you will preserve what's there just now, but for future generations. So hopefully it will just keep it as it is. So unlike the other two that we've seen, I see no reason to oppose to this one.
So no other speakers. I do want to just bring Gavin in before we go to a vote, because we've got a proposal to refuse on the table at the moment. But if there's any comments that have been made that, Gavin, you want to pick up on?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to stress, I think, going down the right track, and that you can approve or refuse this application today. Obviously, we've submitted that you refuse it, and I hear what you're saying, but I just want to be clear, you are minded to approve it, that you're aware of the actual test. I was listening to what Councillor Parsons was saying then. So the test has been set high on purpose. It's a really, really high bar to leap. The reason why it's a high bar to leap is we're creating a house in the countryside. And I know you're all aware of where our local plan stands on that, and our national plan stands on that. Don't normally accept that unless there's specific circumstances. So the test is high. Test is, just bear in mind, it needs to significantly enhance its immediate setting. You can't conclude that it'd be neutral. It has to be significantly enhanced, and that's a high bar. So we're getting a lot better than what's here at the moment. So if you're minded to support it today, that's what you have to tick. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, we'll take this proposal to the vote. All those in favour of refusal, please show. All those against refusal?
Okay, the motion for refusal has been lost by 2 votes to 9 with no abstention.
In that case, I'll bring in Councillor Fairman.
Yeah, I'm not going to propose anything. I just want to, given the vote we just had, I want to suggest to whoever does put their vote hand up and proposes this, that we take the full conditions from the lead local authority are applied to the but I really struggle with the foul water drainage and the impact on the tributary, which is very marginal. You know, they're outside the floodplain by millimetres, they're outside the county wildlife site by millimetres. If that floodplain is built on 1.5 degrees of global warming, then you know, that, yeah, it ought to be, but they're probably going to find that they're little sandbags. So I would like whoever does propose to accept that all the local authority.
Councillor Law.
Yeah, it was a question really for the officers before the new proposal. There are obviously two things we go forward with this. One is to the recommendation for approval with conditions, and one would be a delegation of authority to approve, subject to you being satisfied with the local flood authority responses, foul drainage responses, the ecologist responses regarding the planting scheme, because I sort of think there needs to be some work tweaking done on that to make sure it's local species also that enhance the biodiversity and enhance the environmental sustainability. But I'm not sure whether that's something that's best off done as a condition or best off done as an authority to grant authority to delegation authority. So maybe you could answer that question before I open the mouth again.
A view on that, whether it would be better to give the delegated authority for you as officers to work with the applicant
and the divisional member.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm neutral on there. We could go either way, and I'll tell you why. I could set you out a list of conditions I think I could read to you now, which you're minded to. So, which I think you are. You could approve it now, subject to those conditions, or you could give us the opportunity to work further with the agent to bottom those out. I think we could word the conditions sufficiently to capture everything you said, Councillor Long.
In which case, then I think we'll just go with a proposal to approve the application with the conditions you're about to let me know. But the reason for approval of the application, contrary to the recommendation, is it conforms with paragraph 80E of the National Planning Policy Framework 2021.
And is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Parsons, are you seconding that? Yeah.
Could you let me have a condition? Because obviously one of the big things on
The South West Water responses, the lead local flood authority responses are really, really important, especially given the fact that we took is screwing up this 1.5 degrees at the present time. So we really want to make sure that we're covering ourselves for their benefit.
Okay, so conditions I would suggest you would need to put on our standard ones, given to 3 years in accordance with the approved plans. I would also recommend some conditions to ensure the home in terms of this what it's saying on the tin. Got some very ambitious and positive statements about net zero carbon. I think we can capture those in conditions to make sure what is delivered is what's been said, what has actually been proposed. Samples, everything for this scheme relies on it being of the most exceptional quality. So I think we need samples in terms of the walling and the roofing. Surface water drainage as recommended by our drainage officers, and we can also include a foul drainage. We need to be sure that what they're proposing works, so we can get them before that. I've done all the work, they being the applicant already. This isn't a scheme that's half-baked. You've seen the evidence being submitted. We put a condition on them suggesting requiring them to give us details before they start to make sure we've got those boxes ticked. Landscaping and management plan, it's a very robust scheme in terms of landscaping and biodiversity enhancement. We need to capture those.
Yeah.
We need one for lighting. I'm sure if you've read the addendum from our ecologist, the concern is light spill into wildlife sites. We can capture that. We've got evidence to know we can do that, so I have one for lighting. Finished floor levels, the Environment Agency haven't objected for a few reasons, but one of them is that the house needs to be set at the level that has been proposed. So again, that won't be any difficulty for the applicant. It's what's been proposed. We just need to make sure that the finished floor level is actually safe in the event of flooding. So we put that on for safety. And finally, I'd remove PD rights, general permitted development rights, just to ensure that C here, which we're concluding is the highest of quality, remains that. We can't get any extensions or new works that isn't of that same quality.
Yeah.
It doesn't prevent them coming in the future to do it, but we have to regulate that to make sure it is of that quality.
Yeah.
That's what I suggest, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I just wanted to make my colleague make him feel better in the fact that I actually think this is a better design than the previous two I mentioned, and that's my reasons why I've veered on the road. So don't worry, I haven't completely removed my senses. So I recommend approving the application on policy compliance with those recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the conditions, this is clearly a sensitive site. Are there any conditions on construction as far as minimising any of the issues during construction? Did I miss that?
No, you didn't miss it. Well, let's do that. Thank you. As well, thank you very much.
Also,
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Councillor Fitter.
Just on the landscaping issues, I sincerely hope that we will not, in actual fact, consider just only local
absolutely.
planting, that we will engage in taking in more exotic plants, given the temperate climate they have in this valley.
I would happily, sorry, Chair, I would happily simply on the basis of the fact that our climate has changed. Therefore, we need to respond to that, and therefore some native local species aren't probably going to be satisfactory anymore. So we do need to be looking at that.
So that stone has been thoroughly investigated and lifted already in terms of the applicants' work and their ecologists. It's all about complementing what's there on the wildlife site. So the details that have been submitted are of high quality. So I think I can assure you that what they've set out is of good quality and very much bespoke to that site.
Okay, Councillor Cruz.
Yes, just a question regarding this. What means do we have of ensuring that these conditions actually are complied with within the county?
Standard planning enforcement regulations, I imagine. Would that be correct?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
For no other speakers, we've got a proposal to approve the application from Councillor Long with conditions, and that's been seconded by Councillor Parsons. All those in favour, please show. Those against? And abstentions.
Okay, this application has been approved by 9 votes to 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our second application for today.